It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Wednesday, July 10th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness, Evangelism Scripts Word Study, and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? And yes, it is Wednesday, the middle of the week already. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week thus far. Don't forget, tomorrow we have Q&A Thursday, so get those questions ready and send them to me whenever you can. And if you haven't yet, leave a like and comment to build our community on the video you are watching right now. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive, so let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's amazing Sunday message title is Grace and Truth. All right, it is Wednesday, the middle of the week, and I'm enjoying my time being back in Kuala Lumpur. Very thankful. Yesterday, Eddie, once again, doing such an amazing job with the Tuesday podcast, building up a following and people becoming more and more interactive with him. I'm always thankful that he's trying this podcast and growing in this space. And I just talked to him today, and he's just telling me that it's a great experience for him, and he's already talked to some people who have contacted him directly after he's done his podcast and such. So very grateful, very thankful for all of you out there who are supporting and supporting him and making sure that he's feeling encouraged and he'll do better and better each and every time. For me right now, it's time to work and run again after a wonderfully relaxing time over there in Penang. And like people say this all the time, you need a vacation from your vacation kind of thing, right? You have like a really relaxing time, but you got to get yourself back in gear and start getting yourself running at a higher level than you did before. So I am kind of getting myself back into the groove of things too. I had this conversation with a friend, and it's interesting. We were talking about wealth, and because remember, even from last week, I talked about what would you do with the $10 million and kind of that kind of thing, right? And the thing that we were talking about, it's interesting what people are striving for and the reasons they want financial freedom or independence. And like, for instance, some people are going to say that they want the freedom to not work, to go and buy what they want without checking their bank balance, that kind of thing. And I know a lot of us would probably be thinking something similar to that too. Like, people want to be able to take a vacation whenever they want. And, when you really think about it, I don't think that's what we really want. This like, even for the lifestyle that I've been living over the last couple of years, I look at my life and I kind of do something similar. How I live, where I go, what I eat, what I do. I would say that if I took myself like 5-10, maybe like before I stepped down from head leading, I would say that this would be the type of life that I would want. And, I go to different countries. I go to cafes. I do this and that. I have no real responsibility holding me back. But I would say that it's not as fulfilling as people think. I don't want to live like this every day, to be honest. I don't. I think it's boring. Boring, and like, having too much time is boring. Having too much time feels meaningless. And I was listening to this study on the study done. Researchers said that people who retire early, in something like a few months, they get depression. And they were even looking at people who retired in their 30s. So they made their millions. They're 30, they're like 30, 31 years old. They're already retired, and they have depression. It's basically not what they expected. It's not what they thought it was going to be like. And they want to go back to work, and they want to do something where they're fulfilling something, And I think the type of life that we think we want is actually not sustainable. I think it's a terrible way to live because it lacks purpose and meaning. Like, I understand if you're like over 70 or you're retired. You're retired, you lived a fulfilling life, you're taking care of your responsibilities, your family's doing well, you're taking care of your family and whatnot. Like, I understand at that point, it's very, very different because you reach a certain age and you do need a break. But when you're young and capable, I think the lifestyle that we think we want is so far off from what we really, really thought, right? Even for me, right now in my life that I live right now, I think I have too much time. I really do. I get bored. I feel empty sometimes. I kind of feel like this loneliness sets in. Like, I know I'm not alone, but this loneliness sets in where you're kind of like, everyone else is working and now I have this free time. What am I going to do with this free time? And that's why I usually spend a lot of time like meeting people. Like, I need that interaction, right? And I think having too much time is not healthy for your heart, your mind, and your thoughts. And because we are a people made in God's image and likeness, we are a people that needs that type of love and meaning. And what does that mean? I'm going to go a little bit more spiritual on this. If we lack the love, we start to lack the meaning, because that's what we were created to do, was to love. And I would probably say that this is one of the reasons why people who are not spiritually stable, who are not have that really strong relationship with God, will more often feel empty, lonely, and meaningless. If you're not that close to God. And I think this is why this is how would you say, this is why the most important thing that we're trying to figure out in life is that relationship with God. It's that salvation, right? It's to be with God, to have that connection with God too. And if we lack the most important thing, the most meaningful thing in our life, then this is where you're only okay when you're super busy and not thinking about things, but when you are alone. And if your relationship is not that strong or you're weak in a certain moment, this is when you start to feel the emptiness and the loneliness and such too. So I found that to be quite interesting. Looking back and thinking to myself, I was like, man, like when I do these big missions, like doing head leading, this and that. If you retire early, like, you're looking for meaning, you're looking for something to do. Right? And that's why, thank God for me, there's a podcast, a YouTube channel, all these are different things that I'm doing. Thank God for those things, because this is something that I look at and say that, yeah, this is something that I do think is very, very important and very, very, I see how much more necessary that relationship with God truly is. Right? And I think that's something that we do have to think about more too. Right? Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I think that's something that we should all be kind of thinking about, like really thinking about with ourselves. Is sometimes we think we're lonely, or sometimes we think that it's empty or whatever it is, but it's mainly because the relationship with you and God is not right. And when that is not right, then everything else starts to fall apart. And I think that's kind of how the world actually is at this moment. It falls apart because that relationship with God has been broken. And it was an interesting conversation and a good reflection of what our lives are actually like. And it's interesting because when you go to the world tells us that like we need more money. And the world tells us that we need more things. And the world tells us that, oh, you're lacking this, and that, and that's why you're feeling this way. But when you come to this history, when you come to God, you realize it's something even more deeper than that, because people who have many things and material stuff, if that was the actual answer, that the more we have, the more money or the more things that we had, the happier we would become, then rich people would be that much more happier, the ones that actually bought those types of things. So yeah, it is something that I look at, and something that when this conversation started, it made me think a lot more deeply, like, oh, this relationship with God becomes that much more important in a situation where you kind of begin to feel the emptiness and loneliness and such too, right? Another friend of mine I was talking to, I was hanging out with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about the difference between like providence and the world. And sometimes it's very, very easy for people to see the suffering or see the things that we go through in providence and kind of think to ourselves that it's better in the world. And sometimes we do kind of go into that physical mindset, like, oh, it's better in the world for this or that. And the one thing that we 100% agreed is that, if anything, the one thing that is so much better in providence in the world is actually marriage. Like, it is far and beyond, right? And that's why, even for me, I was telling this person that I am a huge advocate of the way providence does the blessing. I'm a huge advocate of it. Like, of course, I'm not saying it's the most ideal state. We're still in progress to make the blessing better and better. And like, providence blessing system obviously is not the perfect system yet, like the absolute perfect. We're raising our level constantly all the time. It's in progress, but I feel it is so far better than the way the world does it. And when I see people trying to compare providence blessing to the way the world does marriage, I think the world doesn't have much to stand on, because the world isn't good at marriage. The world is terrible at marriage. And it kind of pushed me to start looking at statistics and watching podcasts about marriage and divorce. And like, I was just looking at America. There was this really famous divorce lawyer, and he was doing a podcast. And he was saying that, like, someone was asking the question, like, what are the chances of me meeting like a divorce lawyer, right? And he says, well, if you get married, you have a high chance of meeting someone like me, a divorce lawyer. And he said that, and the reason why is, he said, 56% of marriages end in divorce in America, 56%. So, it's a really, really high rate. But then he said, it's not just those people who come to see me. And he said, if you add another 15 to 20% of people who come to see me to get a divorce, but in the end, they don't divorce because they think it's too complicated to work out the money. So these people, I said 15 to 20% of these people decide to stay together because of financial issues, which means they stay together even though they're miserable. All right. So if you think about this, in the world, it's not 56% are just those who decide to fully go through it. But you're talking another 15, maybe he said under 20%, but he said around 15 to 20% are people who see what the divorce is going to cost, see how crazy and complicated it's going to be. And even though they're miserable, they decide just to stay together because it's better than going through that crazy divorce battle. Which means if 56% are actually getting divorced, 15% are miserable and decide to stay together because of financial reasons, you're talking then how many people? The percentage is no longer 56%. You have to add, on the lower end, 15%, which means over 70% of marriages are wanting to divorce or get divorced, wanting or getting divorced. And I think it's quite sad when you see that type of stat. Like, can you imagine that? You're miserable, but you'd rather stay together because you don't want to deal with the financial issues. And I thought to myself, like, that this is like this is for America, but they said that in Western countries, the stats are about a little bit over 50% of marriages end up in divorce, so more than half, right? So then I thought to myself I'm here in Malaysia, and it's predominantly a Muslim nation, which frowns upon divorce. So what is the Malaysian divorce rate? And they're like, oh, the divorce rate in a Muslim country like Malaysia has risen substantially over the last 3 years. It's at over 43% right now. So it's starting to get towards that 50%, right? And it's really interesting to see that, like, this is what the world is doing. And one of the biggest reasons why I really, really feel and think that providence is the better way to do it, it's because the providence blessing, the marriages are done with God in mind. Like, God is the number one centerpiece. We're looking for people who believe in God. We're looking for people who are in this history. We are looking for people who have that absolute faith in God. And it makes me think about the world. The world is becoming more and more secular. The world is becoming a place where they don't want to believe in God. And I would say if people are not religious or spiritual, believe in God, and they become more and more secular and worldly, what happens is the morals of people will continue to spiral. And people not thinking about God when they choose a partner or get married, but they choose according to their own thoughts and their own ways. And when I look at that, I was like, that's where the world is going towards. It's devoid of God. They're not going to pray. They're not going to set conditions. They're not going to read the Bible. They're not going to make themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. And like, here's the interesting thing. I find this to be quite amazing that the biggest issue we face in Providence is when people are too focused on the spiritual preparation and they don't think about the mental or physical aspects. And I find that far better than only looking at the physical and having nothing spiritual and stuff like that too. Right? Like, think about that. When you look at the way Jesus speaks, he looks at the religious leaders and said, "You're whitewashed tombs. You only look good on the outside, but you're not on the inside." Where Providence is, at worst, you're not going to look good on the outside, but you're amazing on the inside, kind of thing. All you need to do is the easy part is take care of the physical aspect of it. That's it, right? And when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. It really, really is interesting. And like, I would say that even when it comes to a Providence blessing, I do think there is a problem with focusing only on the spiritual, because that doesn't make any sense. Living in this world, you need both the physical, mental, and all three of them: physical, mental, and spiritual. And if you're not balanced, what's going to happen is you're not going to be successful whenever there's no balance. I think that's just really the thing. And for me, when I see how Providence does it, I'm a total advocate. I like the Providence methodology of it, where, like I said, the style of it may not be perfected yet, but the methodology, putting God first, setting the spiritual condition, all those other different things, I think that is the missing ingredient to true love and marriages in the world today. That's what makes it that much worse, right? And I'll say once again, I agree. We're not at the peak way of doing the blessing yet. We are, but the way we do things is focused on God. It's another world compared to how the world does it. Our divorce rates are far different from the world. We are not hitting anything close to 50%, nothing close to it, right? And I would say that it's something where you look at it and you say, yeah, we are truly in a blessed history. And I am always thankful and grateful when I see the blessed families. And yes, sometimes I know sometimes people will say that, oh, why is this blessed family like this? Why are they like that? But I don't think that many people can really, really talk if they haven't really been a parent before. I think that's something that you do need to know the absolute deep shimjung of it, right? Now, can someone who is not married understand someone who's married? And the answer is absolutely. They can. They can understand. They won't know fully what they're going through, right? But when you know someone who knows the deep shimjung of parents and blessed families and JS and what they actually go through as a parent raising their child in this history and all the craziness that happens, I'll tell you right now, one thing is when someone truly, truly understands the heart of the parent, they don't really say bad things about them, and they're not saying complaining about them either. They understand completely. Yeah, this is what they're going through. It's not easy. It's not easy. Pre-dawn, not easy when you have a baby. Pre-dawn, not easy when you have 3 kids. Pre-dawn, not easy, right? And it's something that we do when the people who truly, truly understand, they're the ones that are able to have that, I was going to say empathy, but I think there's one thing wrong with empathy. There's one thing that I don't like about empathy is I think better than empathy is sympathy. Empathy is just feeling something, but more than feeling, we need to be those that are able to not only have empathy, but that empathy will probably lead to sympathy where we can cheer someone up, encourage them, and help them through those times too, right? So, well, maybe it's kind of the first stage is we need empathy that leads to sympathy, that leads to encouragement and taking care of each other too. But yeah, that was, that's something that I looked at. I was like, yeah, that's a really, really interesting thing how when you start to compare things, like if you look only I know that there is usually something that's a little bit off if a member thinks that the way the world does it is better. Like I know that there's something off. It means the person's probably been influenced physically or whatnot, because just looking statistically, the world does not know what marriage truly is. And the way that the Bible puts it, even Jesus says, I believe is like in Matthew chapter 19, he's like, didn't you read, like when God says a man and a woman leave their families and two become one flesh, God never meant for them to be split apart. But it's because of the people's wickedness in their hearts, this is what made them become like that. Right? And I would say it's something that we have to really look into deeply and say, okay, guys, so if you look at the way the world does it, yeah, on the outside, it looks kind of, what's the word? Not like tempting, but you look at it like, oh, wow, I wish I had that. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that is part of temptation where some people will see people together, they're dating or whatnot. And sometimes if people are feeling lonely or something, they're going to be like, oh, wow, I wish I had that type of thing. But then you look at Providence and there's not even dating kind of thing, right? And we're like, oh, this is kind of weird kind of thing, right? And you're like, oh, how can we know whether to marry someone? Because I've heard this a lot. How can we know whether to marry someone if we've only met them for such a short time? And I think that's a very interesting thought to have if you already knew what the results were that most people will not marry the person that they date first, second, third, fourth, fifth time. Like if by your fourth or fifth girlfriend, you're not going to be marrying them and stuff like that too, but you're going to go through a ton of stuff. And even when you finally get to the person you marry, you have more than half the chance of divorcing that person. You know what I mean? So when I look at that, I'm like going, well, if you look at the results, if we really looked at the results, are we really saying that is the better way to do it? And I would say the way the world does it is broken. It is terrible the way the world does it. And whether you do it the way, the providence, like let's just pretend you did it in two different styles. Meeting someone for a short amount of time, meeting someone for a long amount of time. Even at the end of both of those things, you're not really sure. And even at the end of it, if you do it according to the way the world does it, the problem is you're going to have a more than half the chance you're going to get divorced. Where when I look at Providence, people are not just thinking about, these physical things or even mental or financial things, but the most important thing that we do look for is the spiritual. Is this person spiritually strong? Is this person someone who is ready to do great things in this history? Is this something like not great things, I'm sorry, but is this person stable spiritually? And that's the thing we look at. Is this person made themselves? And when we look at those things, these are far greater and better indicators, right? More than I feel something. I'm in love with this person. You know what the interesting thing is? When you look at marriages, if it's based on feeling and if it's based on I fell in love with this person, it doesn't really last. And they said that there's 4 major indicators of how a marriage will actually work out. And it doesn't really have to do with the physical stuff. It has to do with the things that the ideologies, the way that we live, the things we agree and disagree on. And if those things are already pre-discussed and talked about beforehand, this is where things become a lot, where the marriage is 75% chance of not divorcing. if there's like 4 major topics and such. And the more and more it was interesting because having this conversation with the person made me want to research, because I don't want to just say to people, it's so much better in Providence because of this. No, I want to look at, hey, the way the world does it, can we really, really say that way is so much better than the way that we do it? And if you really, really take a look at it, it's not. It's not. So for me, I'm a huge advocate when it comes to the way that God has made the blessing here. And I think we are all blessed to be living in this history and knowing that we have this type of way of doing it. That's what I would say, right? So yeah, that was kind of one of the things that we were talking about. And it was quite interesting because I enjoyed the conversation, and it was something that it made me think really deeply about the way the world does things and how much better the Providence actually does things compared to what we think is the right thing to do. Either way, yeah. So that was kind of one of the things that was on my mind. By the way, thank you for the polls that you did last week, where I was talking about the subtitles, and the 2 most popular languages that people want the Rebel Pastor to be done in is Chinese and Korean. Chinese number 1, Korean number 2. They're the 2 biggest subtitles that people want. So maybe I'm going to start with those 2 languages, but most likely we'll start a brand new channel to put content, like the same content I have now, but putting it with the subtitles. So I think I'm going to do it that way. I think that's going to be the best way for me to do it. I'm not sure what you guys think, but I think that is the best way to do it. Yeah. So Chinese and Korean, I think those 2 will be probably the ones that will be able to work out the best and see what people actually think about this. All right. New poll. New poll just came out. It's about self-love. And I talked about this on Monday, and I thought it was a good poll to put up, what people actually think about self-love. Do you give yourself enough self-love too? And I just want to remind you of the analogy I talked about on Monday was the difference between loving and liking, right? If you see a beautiful rose that's growing out in the wilderness, and if you really like the rose, you will cut it, take it home, put it in a vase, and take care of it. And it'll die in a few days, right? However, if you really love the rose, you don't cut it off. You leave it where it is. You allow it to grow to its full potential. You may fertilize it and do something to help it to get to grow that much better. And that's the difference between loving and liking. And the question to you is, do you really love yourself? Do you have that self-love where you allow yourself to grow to the full potential? Do you love yourself enough to make sure you develop yourself in the areas that you need to work on to grow to the best version of yourself? So that is the poll that I posted up, and I hope it's something that you guys can answer. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on this too. Okay. So, of course, the next segment, we do have the evangelism scripts. So before we get into that, let's move into the first music break of the day.
Just like the rest, I walked in death, not knowing the value of a single breath. My pride was the biggest prize I had to protect, walking around high and mighty, sticking out my chest. Calling the shots like I know what's best, living how I like, but I piled up a debt. Outside's alive and aware the inside is dead, and suddenly truth shine just like the dawn. All things in life I knew 0%, then I realized how far I was gone. Wasn't right about anything, I was dead wrong. Everything thought to be reality was a fallacy. My life wasn't great, it was a tragedy. All I knew was fake, I thought I'm losing my sanity. All the while gazing at me was the Trinity, looking with love, grace, and mercy. Patiently working consistently with me, and eventually brought me to the new history. I learned about someone new whom they used. He worked with heaven and I learned his stories. He is living proof that the Bible's words are true. On the scene at 15, splitting every single seam. God's words flow from him like he's a stream, preaching to the point that even his throat would bleed. The most impressive person I have ever seen, him speaking the truth revealed everything to me. parables, holy sun, soul, entity, spiritual universe. Frankly, I don't think he's done. He's taught me 1,000 tons, too much for a single verse. This is so amazing to the point I may burst. I'm sure he's the one the Bible said would come. Where else would this earth-shattering word come from? Then I really realized he is the Messiah, sent to the world and raised humanity a level higher. Didn't come to destroy, but the word is the fire. Amen to the very end, my faith won't expire. He's been going 79 years and hasn't tired. Due to that condition, the greatest blessing we've acquired. Between him and the Trinity, that time was finally captured. I'm sure now that they got their bride, nothing can match her. Rapture, that's what we received. Was evangelized, lectured, managed, now I believe. Never knew this was something I could achieve. Your blessings really flow endlessly. I promise you, I'll never leave. So I'll stay with you to the death of me. With you, I've fulfilled my destiny. Now I'll reboot, give you the best of me. Offering my youth, running even faster. For me and so many, you're not just a pastor. You're the shepherd over all these pastures. King of kings, Lord of lords, that's for sure. We're a perfect match, a hand and a glove. The atmosphere in the air is full of love. Came from above to hold the banquet. So I'll GGG eternally for 316. Just cause I was swept into the net of the word, heard and learned, doesn't mean it's over yet. I really need to look at myself and reflect. Line up against God's perfect law and check. All my flaws need to be resolved. Be bold to slanderers when I try to call. Like him, I'm thankful for tribulations, cause I didn't fall. With the rapture, I'm standing tall. The love they give is truly priceless. If I'm not with the Lord, life enters crisis. Without him, I'm a ship that's wrecked to pieces. So I'll always eat the word. Box of Reese's, stick to him, red blood cell and Reese's. I praise God for sending son, sing him, and Jesus. He had a plan for them before they were a fetus, to reveal to the world heaven's deep secrets. With his name, bring the pain, breaking Satan's noses. With the Lord's condition, let's show him a comatosis. While looking at heaven, never losing focus, conversing in our thoughts every single moment. Then our spiritual rapture will never be stolen. If you only see strife, come see what peace is. If you want to know heaven, come and see this. If life were an essay, this is the thesis. Rapture, that's what we received. Was evangelized, lectured, managed, now I believe. Never knew this was something I could achieve. Your blessings really flow endlessly. I promise you, I'll never leave. So I'll stay with you to the death of me. With you, I've fulfilled my destiny. Now I'll reboot, give you the best of me. Offering my youth, running even faster. For me and so many, you're not just a pastor. You're the shepherd over all these pastures. King of kings, Lord of lords, that's for sure. We're a perfect match, a hand and a glove. The atmosphere in the air is full of love. Came from above to hold the banquet. So I'll GGG eternally for 316. Remember, this wasn't given for free, so always hear the word and do good deeds. Praising those that saved us is an amazing thing, and live with them in love. 1 John 3:18. Be like him, always run on God's team. If you live like him, you'll surely succeed. Believe him, absolutely, and gotta let you pass. If you want the greatest salvation, walk this only path.
Okay, so let's get into today's evangelism scripts word study. And I was thinking really hard about this because I've given you guys about 2 or 3, maybe 4 already of some different scripts that I would use. And I was thinking to myself, I was like racking my brain today, like what else could I talk about? And as I was preparing for this, I had this really big idea. Not idea, but I remember this one script that I used to talk about to people who are people who don't even believe in God yet. I think this is one of the harder ones, is trying to prove God, where someone doesn't even believe in God yet, right? So they don't even, they're not even at step 1. There's a lot of people out there that do believe in some type of God and some type of creator, and then you're going to have those that are straight atheists. Or maybe they're not going to be atheists. They're people that they might think that there's something out there, but more than that, they're just kind of waiting for more evidence and proof, right? And I think one of the biggest things that you guys will hear when you go out to evangelize is people say, well, if God is real, then, can you prove that he exists? Like, for instance, we can't see him. So how do we know for sure that there is a God? And of course, we could answer about faith. Like, there's one way we can do it. But I would answer the question when people are like, oh, well, how do you prove that God exists? And if if God is invisible, you can't see or hear him. If I can't see him, how can I really, really know that God is there? Okay. And I'm going to go into a script that I would use for these types of people who are trying to look for more in understanding, wow, does God really exist? But I can't see him, so it's hard for me to put my faith in a God that I cannot see. Okay. So one of the interesting things about human beings is we are actually very contradictory, and we have a lot of contradictions in our life. Okay? And sometimes we could be very hypocritical. For instance, when someone says to us, if I can't see God, then I can't believe him. And I would say this is one of the the biggest contradictions a human being has. Why? If we say, if I cannot see it, I cannot believe it, then what about those things in this world that are invisible, like Wi-Fi, like electricity, or not electricity, well, like air, wind, oxygen, love, like these types of things? Then these people, going by their definition of how they can really believe in something, they should not believe in it. Because, why? Because they're saying that if you can't see, you can't believe. But when you look at human beings, we do believe in things that we don't see, right? So what is the real way people are thinking? Okay, so they might say to you, if I can't see it, I can't believe it. But how do people really, really believe? Well, put it this way: why do people believe in air or wind? Okay, we don't see wind, but when we feel wind against our face, or when we see air being blown in, like blown around, like, there's a piece of paper being blown around by wind, we look at that and we say, oh, that is wind, that is air. What about love? Love, we cannot see it, but we definitely feel it. And it definitely is something that makes us do crazy things. When we see our parents, our husbands or wives or children, friendships, whatever it is, when we see them and they're going through a difficult time, we cry together with them, we feel for them, we have empathy, whatever it is, right? These are things that even though we cannot see them, we actually believe, which means that the real way we should be the real way we should be reasoning this is, you can't say, if I can't see, I can't believe. What we really mean is, if I cannot see it, I can still believe it if there is some type of result, right? Just like air or wind. You see the result, the wind against your face, blowing a piece of paper around. You see the result of it and you say, there is wind, right? Which means the real way we should be understanding God is not, I can't see him, so I can't believe him. It should be, I can't see him, but I will believe him if I see the result. Right? If we see a result of God, then we can know that God exists. So the big question comes up right now is, what is the result of God? And this is where, you can go into a Bible verse or not, since the person you're talking to may not actually believe in God. So I'll look at this and say, first, Romans chapter 1, verse 20 says, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse, right? So what's it saying here? God's invisible qualities are clearly seen by what has been made, which means through God's creation. The greatest result that we're able to understand and believe in God is through the result of creation. Creation is the evidence or result of God's existence. And this is something that science cannot prove how we got here. Human beings, so complex. It's indescribable. A human being, we're conscious. We have conscience, right? It's incredible when you look at how intricate and complex a human being is. And we can break it down in many different ways, how amazing creation is, and how creation cannot be something that is random. Creation is not something where it's just like out of nowhere. We just formed randomly. Because when I talk to newcomers about this, one of the big things I tell them is, well, if we really want to know if something is created, there is something that is very, very important that we need to notice. And what's that? Well, when something is created, you can see a design. For instance, when you look at a phone, the design is perfect. Why? The speaker is at the top and the mic is at the bottom, perfect for putting it against your face to talk like a phone, right? And when we understand this, we're like, oh yeah, there is a design, right? So when you see that when something is created, the design is something that is so important, okay? So the question I bring to you now is, if we are created, one of the signs that we are created is that we have a design. So the big question I give to you is, do human beings or creation have a design? And the answer is absolutely. And this is one of the things that Sunseam actually talked about in the past. And, and it's not just human beings. As a matter of fact, like animals, mammals, all the other insects, they all have some sort of design. But let's just start with human beings. And this is the one that this is the thing that Sunseam talked about. And Sunseam said that human beings are designed with the number 6 in mind. We are created with an absolute design. Right? So what does it mean we're created with the number 6 in mind? Well, number 1 is we are created on the 6th day, human beings, right? Right? So what does it mean we're created with the number 6 in mind? Well, look at your body right now. You have one big body that holds all your organs, right? We have a big body. And then out of the body, how many things are sticking out? A head, 2 arms, 2 legs, which means 5. 1 plus 5 equals 6. Now, go to the end of your limbs. So at the end of your arm, you have a big palm, and out of the big palm, you have 5 fingers, 1 plus 5. Go to your feet. On your feet, the big foot, and then you have 5 toes sticking out, 1 plus 5. But what about your face? Sunseam says your face has 5 holes. Now, please don't say your eyes are holes. Why? Because they're covered. How many holes do we have? 5. 1 from the mouth, 2 in the nose, and 2 in the ears. You have 5 holes. 1 plus 5. It's 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Right? And altogether, we have 6 1 plus 5s. Why? 2 feet, 2 legs, 1 head, and then your entire body with the 5 limbs, like 4 limbs and your head sticking out. That's 6 of those same designs coming out of you. And, you can go even further into animals, how animals are relatively the same structure with the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, brain, legs, organs. It's designed. And when I go into this about the design of human beings, it is a proof that we are created, right? Which means, according to our own logic, we cannot believe if we cannot see. However, we can believe in what we cannot see if there is a result. And we have the result for the existence of an invisible God, which is creation itself, right? And after this, I'm going to take it one step further. I would say, well, if we are created, why would the Creator make us? Whenever anything is created, there is a purpose in mind. So think about it. A cup is made for carrying water because we're sick and tired of putting water in our hands that keeps dripping through, right? A creator doesn't just create for the sake of creating. They create for a purpose and a reason. Chairs were made for a reason. Tables were made for, like even us as human beings, whenever we create anything, we create it for a reason. Chairs, tables, houses, fires, fireplaces, blankets, pillows, tissues. I'm just naming stuff around me, right? Even medicine, microphones, TVs, everything is made with the purpose in mind. And that brings the bigger question is, if we are created, the biggest question is, why were we created? If there is a creator, why did he create us? What did he have in mind? And this is why people study religions. This is why people study scriptures. People are trying to figure out, why were we created? Why were we made? For what purpose? Because we all know that when you have purpose, you have drive, you have motivation, you know exactly what you want to do. But how many times in life do we look at ourselves and we think, why am I doing this? Why am I studying? Why am I going to school? What's the reason of all these things? right? And this would be a kind of a short evangelism script that I would use for people who don't believe in God and are somewhat searching for it but haven't found the right answer yet. So this is what I would actually use. So if that's something that helps you guys out a lot too, I hope it does. And if you have any questions or anything about this one, let me know. But today's script is going to be on people who don't believe in God because you cannot see him. And I've run through this script with a bunch of people who gave me that same question also. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is today's evangelism scripts. I hope it's something that helps you guys out when you go to meet people and answer their questions also. Okay? So that means we do have Health is Happiness next. And today we are going to go into the segment of blood pressure from Dr. Gio over there in Australia. Hope you guys are really going to enjoy this. And blood pressure is something that we're all dealing with right now, especially during our stressful times with school and finals and whatever else is going on. I hope that you guys will benefit from this also. But before we get into it, let's get into the final music break of the day. Okay, so let's get into today's final segment on this wonderful Wednesday podcast. Hope you guys have been enjoying this program thus far. We're going to get into Health is Happiness, and Dr. Gio over there in Australia is going to be talking about blood pressure. So I hope you guys will learn a lot from this, and you guys will be able to gain a lot of wisdom and knowledge so that we can control and help our physical bodies as well, all right? So all the way from Australia, this is Dr. Gio with Health is Happiness.
Hi everyone, Julius here, and welcome to Health is Happiness. It's another Wednesday, and I'm looking forward once again to sharing with you more ways we can be healthy so we can live a long, happy life in this history. This is episode 17, and today we're actually going to do something a little bit different. We're going to have a special guest doing today's podcast, and his name is Giovanni. He's a doctor here in Aussie Providence, and he's taken out some time from his very, very busy schedule saving lives to do a segment for us on blood pressure. Very important topic. So I hope everyone really enjoys this. Giovanni, please take it away.
Hello, my name is Giovanni. I'm a resident doctor in Melbourne, Australia, currently working on the cardiology ward. Disclaimer, this talk is not intended to be specific medical advice, just general information for those who want to learn more about high blood pressure. So today we're going to talk about high blood pressure. The medical name for high blood pressure is hypertension, and this is a condition where the force of the blood within your artery blood vessel walls is elevated chronically, which causes damage to those vessels over time. The arteries are important because they carry blood away from the heart to the organs of the body. And if you have hypertension, it in turn increases your risk of developing a stroke, brain aneurysm, chronic kidney disease, heart attacks, irregular heart rhythms, heart failure, disease of the leg arteries, worsening vision, dementia, and many other health problems. So you can see that it's a very important condition to manage because of the possible complications you can suffer as a result of unmanaged high blood pressure. Statistically, about 11% of Australians have hypertension, and it's quite possibly more than that because it's usually a silent condition. People aren't often symptomatic for it. So unless you get your blood pressure checked, you often don't know whether you do or don't have high blood pressure. If people are symptomatic with hypertension, symptoms they may commonly have include headaches, especially early morning headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, blood nose, or chest discomfort or palpitations. And within high blood pressure or hypertension, there are two specific subgroups that we sometimes talk about. One is white coat hypertension, which is where people have elevated blood pressure readings only in the clinical setting, usually caused by anxiety, but normal readings elsewhere. So that's like when you go to see the doctor and you've got a high blood pressure reading there, but every time someone measures it at home for you, it's normal. And masked hypertension, which is another subgroup, which is where people have normal blood pressure readings in the clinical settings, but their blood pressure is always high elsewhere. In terms of the cause of hypertension, we like to group it into primary and secondary, where primary hypertension is hypertension without an identifiable cause. About 85 to 90% of people have this kind of hypertension, and it's thought in primary hypertension, epigenetic, genetic, and environmental factors contribute. On the other hand, secondary hypertension has an identifiable underlying condition, the causes of which are beyond the scope of this discussion today. Now, to diagnose hypertension, we need to show multiple reliable high blood pressure readings, not just one reading. Usually a doctor will be the one that can confirm hypertension, and they will do so if they can determine two readings on two separate occasions that show elevated blood pressure. And how is it measured? Using a blood pressure cuff and monitor. Like I said, the GP or your local doctor will be the one to normally do this, but your pharmacist can also take blood pressure measurements, and you yourself can take measurements too if you have your own machine. If you're taking a blood pressure reading for yourself, here's a couple of basic technique pointers that will help. Make sure that you're well rested, not stressed, and haven't just done anything vigorous. Sit down with your back supported and your legs not crossed. After 5 minutes of resting, place your arm at heart level. You can rest it on a bench or a table. Keep your palm facing up and do not speak throughout the measurement. Find a cuff that is the correct size and place it above your elbow, 2 to 3 centimeters above the elbow crease. Take 3 readings and average them for that one sitting. And then you want to repeat this on multiple occasions throughout the week to get a sense of what your average blood pressure is at most times. And you want to document your blood pressure measurements. It's written as 2 numbers. The upper and larger number is called the systolic blood pressure, and this represents the pressure in the arteries at the moment that the heart is contracting or squeezing to pump blood. The bottom and smaller number is called the diastolic blood pressure, and this represents the pressure in the arteries while the heart is relaxed between the beats. A normal blood pressure is 120 on 80 or below that. And we start to say that people have hypertension or high blood pressure once their systolic blood pressure is greater than 140 or their diastolic blood pressure is greater than 90. What can you do if you've got high blood pressure? So if you take a reading and it's elevated and you repeat those readings and your average is elevated, then the first step would be to go see your GP and get some formal measurements taken and see if they can confirm this. And if you do have confirmed hypertension, then here are some general tips that most people will benefit from in reducing their blood pressure. This is part of what we call lifestyle management. and these can be performed with or without blood pressure lowering medication. Often your doctor will want to encourage you to perform this lifestyle management before starting you on medication to see if they can avoid having to put you on medication. So, lifestyle changes for managing blood pressure. Weight loss. If you lose weight, given that you are above ideal body weight, you can expect to achieve a 1 millimeter mercury reduction in your systolic blood pressure per kilogram of weight lost in an overweight person. When it comes to diet, if you change your diet to the DASH diet, which is a diet rich in fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, and low in saturated and trans fats, you can expect a reduction of up to 11 millimeters mercury in the systolic blood pressure, which is quite large. And then generally, reducing your dietary sodium, we say below 1500 milligrams daily, can give a reduction of 5 to 6 millimeters mercury. Increasing your dietary potassium in the range of 3.5 to 5 grams daily total can decrease your systolic blood pressure by 4 to 5 millimeters mercury. And decreasing alcohol intake, less than 2 standard drinks daily for males and less than 1 for female, can reduce your systolic blood pressure by up to 4 millimeters mercury. With regards to exercise, what we see is that effectively all exercise that's intense enough to increase your heart rate helps. Aerobic exercise, 90 to 150 minutes per week, can give a reduction of 5 to 8 millimeters mercury in the systolic blood pressure. And dynamic resistance, so like weight training, or isometric resistance, like hand grip or band work, both of these can reduce your systolic blood pressure around 4 to 5 millimeters mercury. More general blood pressure reduction advice and general cardiovascular health advice includes stress reduction. Stress is often linked to high blood pressure. It's hard to quantify exactly how much managing your stress will reduce your high blood pressure by, but it's well accepted to be an important part of managing high blood pressure. And smoking cessation. Smoking increases your cardiovascular disease risk, and so if you're a smoker, it's very much recommended to cease smoking, or if not, at least reduce your smoking if possible. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the talk and maybe even learned something about hypertension. Thanks from Giovanni.
And thank you, Dr. Gio, for another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness. Hope you guys have enjoyed and learned a lot from this segment too. It is Wednesday. We're at the end of the podcast. Hope you guys have enjoyed this morning star drive together with whether you're going to work or school, whatever it is, or cleaning your house. I hope that you guys will enjoy more and more each and every day. Everyone, have an amazing day. Have awesome service tonight, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion.